Hi, this is Tracy here from stepbysteppainting.net, and I have this cactus desert landscape night sky painting I'm going to teach to you today. I'm going to demonstrate on an 11-inch by 14-inch canvas. The sample's an 8 by 10. Let's go over these brushes. This is a 3/8-inch flat brush. You can use any similar size flat brush or bright. It's going to be used for the colors in the sky and the land of the silhouette. I also have this number 2 brush. It's a round brush, and it's going to be used for the cacti and the line of the land. And I also have a very small number 0 round brush, and that's going to be used for some of the smaller cacti and some of the stars in the sky. I also have a sponge, and the sponge is going to be used to make that galaxy effect. And I have a toothbrush, and the toothbrush is going to be used to do some of the splatter stars. And then that tiny 0 brush is going to dot some stars in the sky as well. So all the brushes are listed in the description. You can go look to see which ones I'm using. And I'm going to go over these paint colors next. So I'm using Liquitex BASICS for this painting. You can use whatever brand of paint that you prefer to use. Mars Black, Phthalo Blue, Dioxazine Purple, and Quinacridone Magenta. And there's also titanium white on the palette. Okay, I'm going to start out with my canvas facing landscape mode. And before I start the painting, I'm actually going to get a pencil and I'm going to draw in this mountain line. So I get kind of some guidance about how far I'm going to paint my sky down. So on the very bottom, about a couple inches from the bottom, I'm just going to draw a wavy line, and it's going to kind of go up on the side like a cliff. Okay, then I'm going to grab my brush. This is my large 3/8-inch flat. Dip it in the water and pat dry. I do not want too much water on this brush. And I'm going to start with Mars Black. In the upper left-hand corner, I'm going to paint a curve, almost like you're painting a corner sun. Like if you were going to draw a sun in the corner with the curve, that's kind of what this reminds me of. But you're painting in curved motion here. So instead of like left and right, I'm going diagonal. I'm just going to do strokes, just a solid coat of paint, and I'm kind of painting the side. This is a canvas panel. It's not a stretched canvas. If it did have stretched sides, I would paint the sides, but you might see me kind of painting under it because there's a little bit of canvas on the side, like maybe an 1/8 inch curved on the side. So I'm not going to rinse my brush, and I'm going to grab that Phthalo Blue. Okay, and I'm going to continue to paint that curved motion in the sky. Allow that Phthalo Blue to blend in with the black. The way you get it to blend is that you paint over, and that line where they both meet, you just paint back and forth and let it blend on the canvas. I'm going to drag some of that Phthalo Blue into the black, and then I'm going to drag that black into the Phthalo Blue so we get a nice smooth transition. Okay, eventually we want to fade this black out, so I'm going to keep grabbing more Phthalo Blue, and my blue is going to become more pure as I go towards the bottom. I'm moving from the upper left to the lower right, kind of catty corner style, but these strokes are still kind of going in a curve, although they look kind of more diagonal at this point. Keep in mind that we drew in that line. You don't want to go under that line at this point. If you do go under that line a bit, that is fine. Also keep in mind that this guy is going to have black and the Phthalo Blue and the Dioxazine Purple and the Magenta. So all those colors are going to fit in here. So we don't want to paint the whole thing Phthalo Blue and black right now. The black was about 5 inches, so it was a little bit more black than the Phthalo Blue. The Phthalo Blue I went about 3 or 4 inches, but definitely just estimate this. You'll see me grabbing more Phthalo Blue, just adding some more coats on top of the already painted coats, smoothing out the transition of how the colors blend. Okay, I'm going to grab a little bit more phthalo and just kind of top that up. Use the rest of the phthalo that's already on my palette. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush off this time. Going to get that black and blue off. Pat it on the paper towel. You may notice I didn't rinse it off completely 100% all the way. This phthalo and black is very dark and hard to get off all the way. But as long as most of the pigment is off of the brush, that's fine. I'm going to grab the Dioxazine Purple. It's a very dark purple. And in the same way that I let the black and blue transition, I'm going to do it with the purple. So I'm going to paint it first, and I'm going to paint over the area where those two lines meet, blending it on the canvas by painting over it, dragging that blue into the purple and dragging the purple into the blue. So I'm still going in that sort of diagonal curved motion. Paying attention to where my horizon line, my mountain line is. Don't really want to go under it. If you end up going under it a bit, that should be okay. Okay, so I'm going to keep adding this Dioxazine Purple until it gets kind of more pure and not mixed with the blue. If you're having a hard time blending, it's not the best transition. It's not a problem, especially if you're going to do the galaxy part with all the splatters and the galaxy clouds. It's going to kind of hide some of the flaws that you may do in the sky. Just make sure that your strokes are consistent. They get dragged all the way across the canvas. I'm not doing short strokes, I'm doing long strokes. So you don't see any of the stroke marks in the middle area. They're all going the same length from one end of the canvas to the next. Okay, I'm going to kind of tilt that for you to see because there is a glare from my camera. But you can see the color transition. It's not the most smoothest transition, especially with the black, but it's going to definitely not show up like that in the end when I do the galaxy on top. So we have nice dark colors for our galaxy base. Next I'm going to do Quinacridone Magenta, and I chose not to rinse my brush. Blend the Quinacridone Magenta with the Dioxazine Purple in the same way you did with the other colors, by painting over the line where they meet and dragging the colors into each other. This Quinacridone Magenta is going to look very dark at first when it's mixed with that dark purple. We are going to compensate for that later when this magenta turns more pure. The goal is to have a brighter area on the lower part where the horizon is, and on the lower right area. So we get a very dark pigment out of these two colors mixing together. I'm going to go ahead and rinse all of that off to get all of that, the dark purples and maybe some of the blue or black that got dragged on there, so I can get this pigment to be more pure right here. The goal is to get the color to be nice and bright close to the cliff and on the bottom behind where the mountains are going to be. So in order to do that, we can't have these dark colors in there. I'm going to paint the rest of the way pure Quinacridone Magenta. You can still kind of go back and blend that in with the other part, the darker area of the magenta, but try to get this color to be nice and bright over in this area. And then you can define that horizon line now. I'm just making the curved stroke because I'm going to go back in with black and redo the cliff area, so I'm not worrying about that at this point. I'm going to go back and kind of blend that darker into the brighter here to get my transition to be a little smoother. Okay. Painting some more layers of the Quinacridone, and then if you notice, if you see any of your stroke lines, go back and smooth them out. Okay, my next color is going to be titanium white, and that white is going to really give the glow in this, the glow that you see behind the cliff and the mountain lands. So I'm just going to kind of get a lot of this magenta off. I didn't rinse it off all the way. I'm going to grab the titanium white, and right here, just where that horizon and cliff line will be, is where that white is. And then of course I want to blend it in with the magenta, so I'm painting over it and letting it blend in. Okay, so that's part of my cliff line right there, my land line, horizon line. And I do go back in and blend those colors again so that white doesn't look really awkward right there. I'm going to grab the Quinacridone to blend that in a little bit more. Okay, and then I'm going to go in. I rinse my brush off completely because I'm going to go back with the Dioxazine Purple and blend that part in too. So it makes it look like it's a smoother transition and not just all of a sudden a leap jump in color. So I'm going to smooth that out with the same style of stroke right here. This is Dioxazine Purple that I'm using to blend that back in. Okay, I'm going to stop here to let you know that you can stop here. This is a very pretty basic sky, and if you don't want to do the sponging, the extra stuff, the extra galaxy stuff, then you can leave it like this and do the moon and do some of the splatters with the toothbrush and then do your silhouettes. And it's a very pretty, very basic sky, and that's an option you can do. But I'm going to demonstrate how I did the sponge galaxy effect. So if you're feeling very confident in your galaxy sponging skills, then continue to follow along with me. So this is a craft sponge, and I'm actually showing you that I'm dabbing it on the palette with titanium white. Okay, and I dabbed it on my palette to get some of the white off. I'm going to paint this diagonal thing going on, the Milky Way. We'll call it the Milky Way. So I'm going to sponge a diagonal in my sky. It's going to look like a jet trail at first. If I drew or if I painted a jet right there, it would totally work. Then I'm going to paint I'm going to dab that white and kind of blend it out. There's not really a way I can blend it in with the sky at this point because those colors are pretty dry. But I can blend that white out to make it fade. The middle part of that line is going to be my brightest, and I'm sponging it out so it's bright in the middle, and I'm kind of fading the color on the left and right side of that diagonal. I'm working fast. Okay. Then I'm going to kind of fold it to a different part to see how this works with the blending. It kind of blends it a little bit better. So I folded my sponge to a part that didn't have any paint. And it's kind of helping it to blend a little bit more. You can experiment with this too. You definitely don't want to add more white to the sponge because I don't want any more white on this. So continue to work that paint to blend it out. I got kind of the purple to blend in with the sky right there. That looks nice and pretty. Okay, and if you find, if you notice that some of my purple dragged along with me up into the blue area and the black area, that is totally fine. And I'm twisting it. You can try twisting the sponge and see what that does. Some of my pigment wasn't dry underneath, and that is how my white is showing up kind of different colors in some areas, and it's working that way. And then I'm doing some more of the twisting to kind of blend that white a bit more. And I'm going to do, let's see if I can grab some of the white here and paint some more areas. These are going to be very subtle. They're not going to be as bold as this diagonal, but they're there. They're very subtle. I'm going to see if I could grab the white from the middle and paint it in some other areas. And actually, I'm just going to load my sponge up with some more white. So dab it on the palette. You don't want too much white, so dab it on the palette first so you can get a lot of the white off, and it'll be a nice softer white. I'm going to make kind of a more profound area right here. So it's a little brighter. Definitely not as bright as that diagonal. Just some sponges here and there. Okay, I'm going to fold it to a different area that doesn't have any paint. And I'm going to blend it. You can notice how my camera's even shaking right now because of how hard I'm stamping this. I'm moving very fast. I'm trying to get that white to blend out. I find that when I am galaxy painting, it comes out differently every single time because when you do it with the sponge, it's kind of more experimentation than anything. So I'm going to fold it to a different part. And I'm going to load my palette with a little bit more Dioxazine Purple. I'm actually going to fade out those areas with the color. So I'm going to add that color to my sponge and I'm going to sponge over it. So it's going to get that to blend back into the sky. Same thing with the white that I did in this area. And then I'm going to do some more of the Dioxazine Purple sponge to get kind of more of that texture into the sky. Doing some more of the twisting in this area, and really right now I'm not really like thinking, oh, I need to do this color right here. I'm kind of just letting my heart guide the way with this painting right now. Still using the skills, but kind of if you think too hard, then it gets harder to do this sort of thing than if you just kind of let intuition guide you with the painting. Okay, so what I did was I loaded the sponge with the white and the blue here. So the white and the Phthalo Blue to make some more subtle cloud areas in the Phthalo Blue area. So we did the galaxy clouds in the Dioxazine Purple area, and now I'm doing some more subtle clouds in the Phthalo Blue area. Adding the blue and the white to the sponge gives it a different effect too. So I'm going to dab it on my palette to make sure there's not too much onto that sponge and stamp away. Add a little bit of black in there too to get some of the darker areas and help it blend a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to take a break from that sponging and I'm going to grab my toothbrush for splatter paint stars. This is always my favorite part because it's so easy and it makes everything look so realistic all of a sudden. Notice I dipped the brush in the water first. And I dipped in the water but dried it on the towel. So try it out on the palette first to make sure you're not dripping, and then flick the stars onto your painting. To get more denser stars, the brush is closer to the canvas. To get more far away stars, the brush is further from the canvas. So notice in the diagonal area, I wanted those stars to be very clustered together, very dense. And in some of the cloud sponge areas that I did, I wanted denser stars. But then all throughout, the stars are not as dense. Get a little close-up of some of the areas here. Instant galaxy. All you need is a toothbrush and you're good to go. I'm going to tilt this so you can see some of the different color variations, the texture I did with the sponge. Okay, we're going to take a break from that toothbrush and I'm going to grab this number 0 round brush to add. I'm going to manually paint in some of these stars. Can't imagine what would I do without that toothbrush. I wouldn't want to manually paint in all those little splatters. So what I like to do is paint in groups here. So that's a group of 4 dots, and they're not all the same. Some are larger dots, some are very tiny dots. To give it the more natural look, you don't want all your dots to be the same size. You don't want all your dots to be geometrically spaced apart, because that's not how it really looks in the sky. Stars are clustered together. Stars are different brightness levels, and I'm only using white for this, but some stars have more of a blue tint or a yellow or red tint. So I like to paint in little constellation groups of 3 or 4 dots. And maybe some are by themselves too. Okay, and I'm going to take a break from my little tiny 0 brush. I'm going to go back to my sponge. I'm going to add more of a cloud in this area. And actually, this ended up looking more like a thunder cloud than anything, because it ends up being right there by the cliff. So I sponged on my white, and I'm sponging on Quinacridone Magenta over the white, twisting it to give it that cloud texture. So I'm twisting my sponge, I'm pursing it and I'm twisting it. And then I'm going to grab the Dioxazine Purple and I'm going to add that on top of the cloud too, to give the cloud the darker areas. So I'm pressing and twisting to get the cloud texture. Okay, next I'm going to work on the shadow part, the silhouette part of our painting. I'm going to rinse off my 3/8 inch brush because I'm going to use that first. And let me show you. So this line right here, the cliff line and the jagged kind of bottom line that we drew with the pencil. You may or may not see that line that you drew in the beginning. That was a guideline in the beginning. If you do see it, then you can kind of follow it. Or you could redo your line and kind of do your own thing. So I'm just going to fill this whole area easy peasy in with the black. And I started to outline it with this. I'm using the 3/8 inch flat brush, but I'm actually going to switch to a number 2 round so I can really define that line, that horizon line. But for now, this brush is going to fill in some of the bigger areas here. Solid coat of Mars black. You don't really have to worry about the direction of your strokes. Just kind of try to keep it consistent so it's not really showing up too much in the end. Okay, so here's that number 2 brush, round brush that I said I was going to grab, and I'm going to use it to really define that line. Remember we did that white area that mixed in with the magenta, that glow. We don't want to really get rid of it per se. We want it to show. But notice I am painting over a little bit part of it. So I'm going to continue that line using that round brush to define the bottom area. And I'll switch back to my larger brush to fill in the rest of the area. This is probably the most satisfying part of the painting because it's so easy and it just brings it all together and makes it look like a glowing landscape. So make sure your black is all consistent coat, or 2 coats if you want to apply 2 coats. I think I just did 1 coat. It was enough to completely cover the area. I'm painting a little bit of the sides of the canvas where it stretches over on the side. Okay, next I'm going to grab the number 2 round brush and I'm going to paint these cacti in. Very simple. If you notice on my palette, I'm kind of twisting the brush to kind of get that paint to go to a point because I need a steady hand and a brush that's going to cooperate with me for this step. So when I do cacti, saguaro cacti, I paint the middle part first and then I do the arms. So super simple for the arms. Start at the middle part and then drag the paint up. It's important that you're using a round brush for this step so that the arms of the cactus, the cacti, will be curved and not straight. So if I used a flat brush, it probably won't have the same effect. And all of these cacti are different heights. They're different widths. So some are taller, some are shorter, some are thicker, some are thinner. Some are far away, so they look smaller. Some might be closer up, and that's why they're larger. So you got to think about that. Give it the more natural look than having them all be the same size. And then if you have a black paint pen, you can do that if you're having a hard time with this, because you do need a steady hand for this step. They're very small cacti. But the paint pen is actually very helpful for this step. Then you can really get in there and make your cacti look realistic and different shapes and sizes, because it's more easy to control the paint pen for this kind of thing. I switched to the number 0 round brush to get more thinner cacti. So the smaller ones that are in the distance, you'll need a very small, fine detail brush for that. Basically, I'm switching between the number 0 and the number 2 round brushes for this step. And so just paint all your cacti all along the bottom line and up into the cliff. And make sure that even though they're going to go on the cliff, that the line in the middle still stays vertical and it doesn't get slanted or anything like that. So just carry on and paint all of your little cacti, saguaro cacti family members. I thought about doing some of the arms facing down, but I just didn't do that for this painting. But try to vary your arms. So maybe some of the arms are closer to the middle part. Maybe some are further and have a larger gap. So you want to change it up a little bit. You don't want to get stuck into painting all of them the same. And then I'm going to start adding them on this cliff. And I mentioned earlier, just make sure that you do your middle line first and that it is going straight up and down. It's kind of tempting to make them go slanted, but make sure that they don't. So up and down lines, vertical lines, all up the cliff. And then also vary the sizes of the cacti over here too. I want to show you the paint pen. This is a Craft Smart paint pen, so it's not a very good one. It's actually running out of ink, but I want to demonstrate to show you what that would look like and see. Very easy and more easy to hold the paint pen and get a steady cactus line. It creates a different effect, a very thin cactus, and actually kind of turned out cool because it looks like that cactus is more distant because the color is lighter. So that's an option. I'm not going to continue with that paint pen because it's just going to drive me crazy with the ink almost being out. But if you have a decent black paint pen that you use maybe for rock painting, and but you can use that on canvas too for these kind of steps. Okay, the video is going to speed up just a bit because I'm just painting the same thing over and over again along this horizon. Super simple, super relaxing. Okay, I'm actually going to take my brush again and make some of these swirl cacti taller. So this was just me being picky about too many of them being the same height, and I just went in and made some of the center parts taller. Next, I'm going to actually grab a piece of chalk, and to do my moon, I'm going to draw a crescent moon. So for some reason, I always mess up on my crescent moons. So what I do is I draw a circle first, and then I draw the crescent inside of the circle. That's what I do. If you want to just draw the crescent without having to draw the circle, that's perfectly fine. And then I'm going to paint in my moon. And actually, my water jar is so dark. I actually ended up having this white being a little tad, like it got a little bit dark, but it wasn't too bad. I could have rinsed my water out at this point, but I have a tendency to not want to get up when I'm in the moment. So painting this crescent moon with a number 2 round brush, so a small round to get into those thin areas. Then notice I dipped my fingers in the water. I'm going to just erase that extra chalk line right there with the water. It should come right off. Just be careful not to try to erase your chalk too hard so that the paint lifts up. And actually, I'm moving my canvas into an awkward area right here that it's probably difficult for you to see. But I'm actually taking my brush and really defining the area, some tight corners in this moon. There we go. I'm actually going to outline this moon just a bit with a fine brush and Mars black. So I actually watered down this black just a bit so that I can get a very smooth line here. But I went back in and I outlined this moon. This was purely an artistic choice at this point. You don't have to outline it if that's not something that you want to do. But it helped to kind of really define that point of the crescent. My husband actually makes fun of me when I do crescent moons because of how many times that I've painted Starry Night. It's actually embedded into my hand that every time I paint a crescent moon, it's got to look like the Van Gogh Starry Night. It's almost as if I forgot how to paint a normal crescent moon that's not a Starry Night crescent moon. So that's where this comes from. Not that there's nothing wrong with that with Starry Night. It's just, it's kind of funny when you're so used to painting something and all of a sudden you forget how the normal one looks like. So next, what I'm doing is just, I'm grabbing the sponge and I'm going to fade this white to a blue. So I grabbed Phthalo Blue on my sponge and I am lightly sponging over the white. Another pure artistic choice at this point because I just felt that white was a little too bright and I wanted to dim it just a bit into the sky with Phthalo Blue. If you are doing this, you don't want to add too much of that blue to the sponge because you don't want to lose the Milky Way. Just a little bit, enough to dim that color. And then I'm going to get the toothbrush and do more splatters. Definitely, if you felt finished with your painting, you can stop. I have closure issues with my painting. I never know when to stop for some reason. So I added more splatter stars. And actually, I'm going to do my number 0 round brush in just a second and add more of the dot stars too. And then I'm going to do some sparkle stars, some diamond stars. So grab the number 0 round brush. And rinse the color that is on it. Okay. And I'm gonna do a diamond star. So I'm doing curved lines forming a diamond, and then I'm doing a line that kind of fades out from the middle. So the diagonal lines go from the middle and they fade out. Okay, I'm gonna do one right here too. So another diamond. And the diagonals fade out from the center. Notice how even with these diamond stars, I still have variation in size to give it that more natural look. As I paint these final stars, this painting is coming to an end. I hope that you found this painting tutorial helpful. If you're watching this from YouTube, you can go to my website at www.stepbysteppainting.net to see more free beginners painting tutorials. Thanks for watching.